Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our afternoon plenary session. We are glad that you are still here with us for our last panel of the 4th National Data Privacy Conference in celebration of the Privacy Awareness Week 2021. While it is undeniable that the COVID-19 pandemic has posed several restrictions, it also opened many possibilities. Like today, we are delighted to welcome our expert colleagues who are members of the Global Privacy Assembly COVID-19 Working Group. They come from various jurisdictions and they will discuss their responses to the pandemic protocols, as well as lessons learned. And to formally open our plenary session, we welcome once again our Privacy Commissioner, Mr. Raymond E. Liboro.
Colleagues in public service, our data privacy advocates, and everyone in this meeting, a pleasant afternoon to all of you. Also here with us are our colleagues from the Global Privacy Assembly COVID-19 Working Group who have shown their support to us despite the difference in time zones. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to my colleagues. And coming from the Philippines, mabuhay kayong lahat. Thank you for accepting our invitation to take part in this event. We have come to a significant portion of our 4th Privacy Awareness Week, the jurisdiction reports on the COVID-19 response. But this particular event is a GPA-sanctioned event. Privacy and data protection authorities have played an invaluable role in providing guidance and assistance to governments, relevant organizations, and other stakeholders. One of the earliest goals of the NPC was to become part of the International Data Protection Assemblies to gain critical insights on global privacy standards, trends, and activities to alleviate the Philippine privacy setting. In 2016, the Philippines became a member of the prestigious International Conference of Data Protection and Privacy Commissioners, or ICDPPC, which later became the Global Privacy Assembly, or GPA. The GPA is the premier global forum for data protection and privacy authorities, composed of more than 130 data protection and privacy authorities from across the globe. Back then, we had our share of humble praises for our creative approaches here in regulation and constructive stakeholder engagement. We also co-authored resolutions on artificial intelligence, e-learning, and conference census, to name a few. We also became part of the working group for cross-border privacy law enforcement. Then in October 2018, the Philippines earned a voting seat in the 5-member executive committee of the ICDPPC. Along with us were Australia, Canada, Burkina Faso, Bulgaria, Albania, Mexico, and the United Kingdom, which holds the chairmanship under Commissioner Elizabeth Denham. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the importance of international collaborations. In the earliest days of the health crisis, countries worldwide increased their data processing activities to obtain crucial information on the spread and impacts of the virus. Everything shifted online almost overnight. And in a brief period, we expedited the development of numerous data-driven technologies. The intensified collection and use of data presented numerous data privacy risks that even transcend borders. The GPA, recognizing the need for collaborative approaches, established the GPA COVID-19 Task Force as a mechanism to consolidate the observations, expertise, and influence of the GPA members into critical resources. The Philippines, through the National Privacy Commission, was selected as the chairman of the GPA Task Force. The task force delegated its strategic fronts in 2 groups. First, the subgroup on emerging issues, headed by the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data of Hong Kong, or the PCPD of Hong Kong. And second, the subgroup on capacity building, headed by the Dubai International Financial Center. The subgroup on emerging privacy issues steered the creation of knowledge and content sharing, mainly the compendium of best practices of GPA members and observers. At the same time, the subgroup on capacity building led the engagement through webinars, which were GPA initiated and collaborated with other external networks, highlighting use cases and best practices worldwide. While the task force concluded its assigned mandates, the GPA still recognized the need for a continuing mechanism that will build on the successes of the COVID-19 task force. Thus, the working group was established in 2020 with the Philippines through the NPC as its chairman. The GPA Working Group on COVID-19 currently has 37 member jurisdictions and organizations. To complete its deliverables, the working group retained the same approaches as the task force. Its two subgroups, subgroup on emerging issues and the subgroup on capacity building, retained similar leaderships and mandates. Additionally, the working group has focused on 5 strategic issues: alternative working arrangements, the use of e-learning and online schooling technologies, sharing of data between hospitals and health ministries and other relevant government bodies, personal data processing for vaccination programs, and the processing and sharing of health data concerning travel and passenger data. Recently, Subgroup 1 has concluded its survey, which helped identify privacy touchpoints useful for non-privacy regulators and institutions dealing with high-risk personal data processing. Also, through the Working Group initiative and the help of Subgroup 1, the GPA has released the joint statement on the use of health data for domestic or international travel purpose. The statement encourages organizations to minimize data collection to only information that can contribute to the protection of public health, while also factoring in reasonable retention periods and other privacy protection measures at the outset. Soon, Subgroup 2 will hold a webinar in June with the Center for Information Policy Leadership. The webinar will discuss the reports and updates of the subgroups in all its meetings, deliverables, experiences, and recommendations. In all our meetings, the jurisdiction reports is my favorite portion. It serves as an eye-opener and learning experience, and it has since evolved into a venue for updates on the latest developments within the region and other jurisdictions. The reports likewise provide opportunities for members of the GPA COVID-19 Working Group to express their sentiments on the current COVID-19 responses and challenges. One will realize that other jurisdictions also experience some of the same privacy issues that we have here in the Philippines and the other countries that we are all currently dealing with. In this portion of Privacy Awareness Week, we hope to share the jurisdiction reports with a broader audience. We hope that we will all find the entire experience significantly enlightening. Again, the NPC would like to thank the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, the Federal Commissioner for Data Protection and Freedom of Information of Germany, the Federal Data Protection and Information Commissioner of Switzerland, the United Kingdom Information Commissioner's Office, or the ICO, and the Personal Information Protection Commission of Japan for participating in the COVID-19 Working Group. And to all the members here, thank you for all your support in this GPA sanctioned event that goes simultaneous with our commemoration of Privacy Awareness Week here in the Philippines. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Liboro. Now, at this point in our program, I am very honored to welcome our colleagues from the following jurisdictions: Mr. Christopher Prince, Strategic Policy Analyst under the Policy, Research, and Parliamentary Affairs Directorate, Office of the Privacy Commissioner, Canada; Mr. Marcel Voyel, Delegate, International Affairs, Department for International Affairs, Federal Data Protection and Information Commissioner, Switzerland; Ms. Kanoko Esaki, Deputy Counselor for International Affairs, Personal Information Protection Commission, Japan; Mr. Stefan Niederer, Division 14, European and International Affairs, the Federal Commissioner for Data Protection and Freedom of Information, Germany; and lastly, Ms. Anne Russell, Group Manager, High Priority Inquiries, Policy Projects, Information Commissioner's Office of the United Kingdom. Now, let me call on our first panelist for this afternoon, Mr. Christopher Prince from Canada.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks again to the organizers of the event, everyone in the Philippines National Privacy Commission and Commissioner Liboro for the invitation to debrief you this afternoon on the state of affairs here in Canada and what our office has been working on over the past 14 months in relation to the pandemic. As Commissioner Laboro just noted, the COVID working group of the GPA under his leadership has been an enormous benefit to our office and the work that we've been doing. As you can well imagine, as you can all recall over the events of the last year, there has been a surge globally in technical discussion, in discussions of scientific principles that many of us in the privacy community, certainly in our office, we were not experts in. And the COVID working group under Commissioner Laboro has been a huge help in bringing together information from around the world as it evolved, because it's very difficult to keep on top of all of these technical developments when, as we say, this was a global emerging phenomenon. Now, before I go into the privacy details, because we're going to be talking a lot about health issues and the state of things in Canada, I should set out from the outset in Canada, at least, responsibility for health issues is a very distributed responsibility legally and constitutionally. So, I mean, essentially what that means is that while the federal government and where our office plays a role at lower levels of jurisdiction, both at the provincial level and the municipal level, there is also much health responsibility. So what that's meant in Canada, in any case, given it's it's an awfully big country, 6 time zones, is that different regions have approached the issues of the pandemic, issues of quarantine, issues of travel control, issues of when it was safe or not safe to have schools open, when it was safe or not safe to have restaurants and retail venues open. These have all been approached differently in different provinces. I'm sure this is the same in many countries. Getting uniformity around quarantine measures and screening has been tricky from day one. So I just wanted to make that that point. Also, again, before we get into the privacy things, I think to give you a sense of the impact the pandemic itself has had in Canada would be important to know. As of last month, and I'll go into some other statistics later about the use of various technologies, but as of last month, we have had over 1.2 million confirmed infections in Canada. That's of a population of about 40 million. We've had tens of thousands of people hospitalized, of course, in intensive care, not just hospitalization, but fairly serious hospitalization. We've had 25,000 deaths, tragically. And as of this date, most provinces and urban areas in central and eastern Canada are still locked down. So, so for example, my kids, so I live in Ontario, so that's central Canada. My kids have been out of school now for almost 4 months. And I myself and all of our team at my office, we've been working from home now for 14 months. So that gives you an indication of the sort of the state of the impact that COVID has had. So to go back to the privacy issues specifically. Last March, when the first shutdown began, our office was lucky enough to have been technically set up to move to telework fairly quickly. And we immediately moved our priorities around, given the state of the emergency, to get oriented towards producing privacy advice and guidance specifically on pandemic-related issues, because it was obvious that this was going to dominate the agenda. Our first foray into general guidance, now to get into the privacy, the meat of it, was entitled Privacy and the COVID Outbreak. You can tell right there by the title, as of last March, we were still struggling to understand the scope and the duration of what the emergency was going to be. So our first piece of guidance essentially set out how our Federal Privacy Act, which is our public sector act, so the privacy law for government institutions, and the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, that is the commercial privacy law that we have in Canada, how these two acts specifically regulate sharing of information in emergency situations, and specifically in health emergency crisis. We also set out in that document, because there are certain provisions in the Act for information sharing in these sorts of exigent emergency circumstances. But also in that document, we had to make reference to all the numerous provincial authorities who also have responsibility in this area. And in some provinces in Canada, there are specific health privacy information laws that provincial privacy commissioners oversee. So the whole question of what was legally permissible in terms of information sharing right out of the gate last March became an issue. Interjurisdictionally, which laws applied, who could share with whom. These were all very topical questions, and they came up constantly in government conversations, in law enforcement situations. So then we took that guidance a step further, and we produced another piece called, so now this is in April 2020, we produced what was called a framework for assessment of privacy impacts in response to COVID-19. Now, this was a document tailored at government institutions who were going to have to undertake privacy impact assessments in relation to the COVID measures that they were standing up at that time. And again, there was a huge rush, a surge of interest and an intense desire to understand from all areas of government that were working on pandemic issues what was required of them legally, what issues around data retention and data safeguards they needed to think about as they stood up these programs. And in some instances, we were dealing with departments who had never done pandemic work before, and nor had they ever done much privacy work before. So this was all incredibly new to them, but given the urgency, they needed to be walked through the process of how the privacy component and privacy oversight works for new government programs. So that was another document that we put out to deal with the PIA issues. Then in May 2020, so now if you can recall last spring, everybody, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but all around the world, people began to start talking about contact tracing and digital solutions for contact tracing, and ways that mobile devices or smart cards, or in some cases dedicated bracelets or chips, could be used to facilitate either forward or backward contact tracing. And this was discussed all over. Certainly the GPA working group dealt with the issue. What we did is put together a joint statement. Again, we worked with our provincial counterparts here in Canada, and we issued a statement called Supporting Public Health and Public Trust, Privacy Principles for Contact Tracing and Similar Apps. Now, we knew at the time that our government and governments around the world, certainly in the APEC countries, in the EU, were working also on these sorts of applications. But what we focused in on was the specific data principles that we would want to see if these were going to be installed on mobile devices. And those were principles like you need express consent from individuals before the applications are installed. The purpose has to be limited to the specific function of contact tracing. There has to be transparency around how the application works on individuals' phones, and there has to be accountability for how that's used. And it was around that time, also going back to Commissioner Laboro's introduction, that I think it was around that time that the task force, his task force, was stood up, and we were brought into the fold. Now, let's see how I'm doing for time. The next detailed review that we undertook. So now moving off of sort of general guidance that the office issued and into a specific review was again of one of these contact tracing apps. There were many of them, of course, but the federal government here in Canada engineered and endorsed one in particular app, which they had built themselves in conjunction with local private sector companies, called the COVID Alert Exposure Notification app. And we specifically looked at this in June, and then in July issued a fairly detailed set of recommendations on what we felt needed to be built into this application. We went back to the joint statement that we'd issued with the provinces for our sort of criteria here. But again, the requirements that we pushed at the government, which they ultimately met to their credit, was that they needed to secure clear consent from users before the applications were installed. They needed to reach out to vulnerable populations who might not be able to get at some, less tech-savvy folks, with clear messaging and explanations about how the app was going to work. They needed to introduce strong technical safeguards across the entire ecosystem of the app, because these apps don't work in isolation. There's usually a server, there's usually storage, there's usually transmission components, and that's just the way mobile apps work. So the information needed to be secure across that entire system. And finally, probably the most contentious, is that we recommended a full decommissioning of the app and its associated data if it ultimately proved to be ineffective. Now, there's a question that's still looming, I think, in the data protection community around the ultimate utility of these digital solutions, and this is where I can go into a little bit more statistics if you're interested, just to indicate the limits on what a tool like this would have here in Canada. Last month alone, there were 165,000 cases of COVID that were reported. Now we know that because of medical testing. So we have fairly firm numbers on this. Now the app itself that I just mentioned, the COVID Alert app, that's only used by about 3 million people every day in Canada, out of a total population of 40. So the app itself last month issued 35,000 exposure notifications. Again, this is an alert when it's possible that someone may or may not have been exposed on the basis of how the app works. And of those 35,000 notifications, there were only 400 verified cases ultimately. So that gives you some indication of how the trickle down works. The apps are not perfect, and they were never meant to be perfect solutions. But their usage and effectiveness is very contingent on uptake, whether people have the phones with them all the time, whether the phones are on all the time, whether Bluetooth is engaged or not engaged on the device at all times. So there's a lot of contingencies. So those are the sorts of questions that will ultimately factor into the decision about whether the app is effective or not. And that is an audit that our office will be involved in, along with our federal health regulator, later. It's begun already, and we intend to report later in the year. And just to conclude, so again, back to Commissioner Laboro's points, the GPA joint statement, Canada was not hugely involved in this, but it was incredibly welcomed when it was issued in Canada, thanks to the great work of the NPC there in the Philippines, colleagues in the UK, because the timing was perfect, because the issue of vaccine passports is now very much live in Canada. So having sort of collaborative but co-developed international documentation around privacy issues, that things like vaccine passports, the privacy issues that these raise was incredibly helpful. And so inspired by that, again, our federal and provincial commissioners issued just earlier this month our own statement on vaccine passports in order to limit their uses to solely what's necessary, and that stress that organizations need to be accountable and transparent in how these digital solutions link up with vaccine registries. I'm going to close on that, but I can't thank you enough again for listening, and end the invitation, and I'd be happy to take any questions during the Q&A.
Thank you, Mr. Christopher Prince from the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, Canada. And now, we have with us a video from Mr. Marcel Voyel, Delegate International Affairs, Department for International Affairs, Federal Data Protection and Information Commissioner of Switzerland.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Firstly, I would like to thank Mr. Commissioner Laboro for inviting the Swiss Federal Data Protection and Information Commissioner, the FDPIC, to make this presentation regarding the emerging data protection and privacy challenge posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. It is an honor to have the opportunity to talk to you, data protection officers, government regulators, and key stakeholders about what has kept the Swiss Commissioner busy with reference to the pandemic in the last year. My name is Marcel Vogel, and I am the Delegate of International Affairs at the FDPIC. Before I start, I would like to quickly mention our special legal and political structure that has had some influence on how the government reacted to the pandemic. The Swiss Confederation, with a population of 8.5 million people, is divided into 26 cantons. Each of the 26 cantons has its own data protection law, which means that questions of legal responsibility come up regularly. The FDPIC is responsible for federal authorities and private individuals. On the other hand, the 26 cantonal data protection authorities are responsible for the data privacy of the public tasks of the cantonal authorities. In connection with COVID-19, our authority have been concerned primarily with data collection by private individuals, then the collection by tracing app, collection from air travel, and at the moment with the data collection for vaccination certificates. Let us have a look at the timetable since the pandemic hit us. With the first pandemic wave in March 2020, the Federal Council handled the crisis by issuing legal emergency ordinances. It reacted early and cancelled the Geneva International Motor Show in March. In the summer, the rules were largely relaxed, but with larger events still banned. The introduction of the contact tracing app was positively accepted by the public and well implemented from the point of view of data protection law. The implementation was based on the DP3T model developed by the Swiss University EPFL. The app follows a decentralized approach. That means only the proximity between users is relevant. No location data is collected at all. It is not possible to track people or devices unless a person with a confirmed infection sends notification to the server. No personal data at all is uploaded to the server. Only encounters between individuals of 2 meters or less are recorded, and this only generates a message if that encounter lasted for at least 15 minutes on any day. Data on the phone is only stored for as long as it's useful to detect possible infections, and the use of the system is limited to the duration of the pandemic. The application code is available on GitHub, and thanks to this transparency, it can be ensured that there are no backdoors installed in the app. So how does the app work for the individual? Those persons who tested positive for COVID-19 were given a code to enter in the app. So people who had been in touch with the infected person within the last 14 days were informed about their contact to an infected person. There were big delays at first, then things got better. The use of the app is voluntary by law. Was it a success? Yes, it was. 1.75 million active installations are registered at the moment. In the period before the second wave hit, the responsibility was given to the cantons to take adequate measures to deal with the pandemic. The government of the smaller cantons were reluctant to impose measures, such as closing shops, restaurants, and cinemas. Obligations to wear a mask were introduced in the summer, but only locally in some regions. To wear or not to wear a mask was the big question in this time. All operators of publicly accessible facilities had to provide a concept for the collection of contact data, and whilst the scope of the data to be collected was defined by the federal parliament, the process of that data collection was necessarily diffused. For example, each restaurant launching its own app or procedures to collect the contact details of the guests. The federal government mandated that data may only be collected for the purpose of contact tracing and must be deleted after 14 days. The operator or organizer was at all times responsible for the confidentiality of the collection and the security of the data. It follows from the principles of data protection law that for persons who do not have a smartphone with them, an alternative of collection must be provided, such as the filling in of paper forms. Just before Christmas, when the second wave was truly upon us, the Federal Council took over the responsibility for managing the pandemic again. The restaurants were obliged to close. Internationally, we see a developing trend that giving access to stores, goods, or services is becoming primarily dependent on checking an individual's vaccination status or tracking them. Creeping surveillance is rising. For example, access systems in certain regions of the world are already activated in combination with facial recognition. In our point of view, the main principle is to avoid creeping total surveillance, which is triggered by COVID-19. Also in Switzerland, private providers announced that they were considering giving access to goods or services dependent on the disclosure of test results or vaccination. This may lead to digital access thresholds for private services. This has a major impact on the informational self-determination of the population as a whole by influencing the use of the smartphone in communication between private companies and their customers, and will most likely shape it beyond the phase of the current pandemic. There are people who are unwilling to show a smartphone equipped with a certain program because they are afraid of unauthorized access to their private data. And there are people who are unable to do so because of their age, health, or disabilities. These people must be offered reasonable alternatives to the digital acquisition of the aforementioned personal data under comparable conditions. The Swiss Commissioner is against solutions that make a visit to a restaurant dependent on the use of a certain app or smartphone. Behind this position is the concern that this practice by restaurants could lead to further encroachments on the privacy and informational self-determination by private individuals. In January, Switzerland began rolling out its vaccination program. To date, 30% of the Swiss population has received at least one vaccine dose. 16% of the people are fully vaccinated. Initially, with a platform called meineimpfungen.ch, it seemed that this would become the national platform, where the vaccinations of the people would be captured digitally. However, in March, an investigative article about the aforementioned platform was published, which highlighted that the platform contained a lot of deficiencies from a data privacy and data security view. At the moment, there is the digital green certificate in preparation on European level. A digital green certificate is digital proof that a person has either been vaccinated against COVID-19, received a negative test result, or recovered from COVID-19. This certificate will be readable from a digital or paper format. This certificate could theoretically also be used on a national level. Under consideration of the principles of proportionality and data minimization, the Swiss Commissioner has taken the position that the shown data set in the certificate should be less on domestic level than on European level. Particularly, also the two European data privacy authorities, EDPB and EDPS, as well as the data protection authorities of France and Italy, state that a concept can meet the principle of data minimization in different use cases if it provides for different data sets and QR codes. In summary, we want to avoid the situation where restaurants, pubs, theaters, etc. are becoming processors of health data. Or more British, let the cobbler stick to his last. Thanks for having had the opportunity to share with you our challenges and insights of the FDPSC. This is the situation in Switzerland. Thanks for your attention.
I hope you have listened with much interest in the presentation of Mr. Marcel Voyel from the Federal Data Protection and Information Commissioner of Switzerland. Now, our next panelist is the Deputy Counselor for International Affairs of the Personal Information Protection Commission of Japan, Ms. Kanoko Esaki.
Thank you. So please let me share my screen with you firstly. Okay, can you see my slide?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So, hello everyone. I'm Kanoko Esaki from the Personal Information Protection Commission, also called the PPC, which is the Data Protection Authority of Japan. Before I start my presentation, I would first like to thank the Commissioner Rivero and the NPC Philippines for inviting us to speak at this very important seminar. Given this opportunity, today I would like to introduce some examples of measures taken by the Japanese government in tackling COVID-19 pandemic and the advisory role that the PPC Japan played. So I'll begin with the current COVID-19 situation in Japan. In Japan, as in many other countries around the world, we still see new cases of COVID-19 every day. As of May 27th, more than 72,000 people have been diagnosed with COVID-19. This accounts for 0.6% of the total population. The number of deaths rose to over 12,000 now. According to experts, a new variant of the virus may have almost replaced the original strain in Japan. The government has declared the state of emergency 3 times by now. The first state of emergency was from April to May of last year, and the second was from January to March of this year. Now, Japan is under the third state of emergency since 25th of April till the end of this month for now. In addition, so-called priority preventive measures is now introduced, and this requires people to take actions similar to, but not so strict as under being state of emergency. As of May 27th, 10 prefectures, including Tokyo, are under the state of emergency, and 8 prefectures are under the priority preventive measures. This means approximately 40% of prefectures in Japan are under either of the state of emergency or the priority preventive measures. Vaccination has been started since February 17th of this year, and as it is fully funded by the government, vaccines are provided free of charge. The government is securing enough vaccines for all citizens, and currently, vaccination for the healthcare professionals and the elderly are underway. In Japan, we use a type of vaccines which requires 2 doses in order to get the full effect. As of May 27th, over 2.9 million people are completed their second dose of the vaccine, which accounts for approximately 2% of the total population. Now, I'd like to move on to the next topic, explanation about the public and the private sector partnership to tackle COVID-19 pandemic. The Japanese government has been implementing some countermeasures to deal with the pandemic, and the use of big data is one of the examples. Much of last year, when we were still at the early stage of this pandemic, the Japanese government issued a request to platform and mobile communication providers asking to provide statistical data to use to identify areas and locations of COVID-19 outbreaks and clusters. Responding to the government's request, the platform providers, such as mobile phone companies, provided the Health Ministry with the statistical information produced by analyzing location data, search histories, and purchase histories of the service users, etc. The data provided by the service providers are statistical data, meaning it does not contain any information that can identify an individual. The Health Ministry uses these statistical data to verify the efficacy of social distancing measures and anti-cluster measures that has been taken so far, and to improve the quality and efficacy of further countermeasures to be taken. Next, I would like to speak about the contact tracing app. The Japanese contact tracing app is called COCOA, which is the abbreviation of COVID-19 contact confirming application, and it was released on June 19th of last year. Downloading this app is voluntary. The system uses Bluetooth to detect the possibility of close contact with the infected person without recording information that can identify an individual, such as phone numbers or location information. A close contact is defined as being within 1 meter from the infected person for at least 15 minutes. When a possible close contact is being detected, the app notifies the users and helps seek instructions from the medical institutions and enables subsequent action to be taken. As of May 21st, approximately 28 million people have downloaded this app. The PPC Japan was involved in developing this contact tracing app and provided some inputs to ensure that the app's safety in terms of protecting personal information and privacy. For example, the PPC Japan took part in the express meeting on contact tracing apps as an observer. The PPC Japan published a statement expressing its views on effective use of contact tracing app to help deal with COVID-19 pandemic. The said statement explains the PPC's opinion, paying attention to the balance between the demands for securing the individual rights and interests related to personal information and those for public policy use as a countermeasures for COVID-19 pandemic. The experts meeting on contact tracing apps drafted the specification document of the app and made assessment on its privacy and security aspects. In doing so, the PPC's view on the contact tracing apps were duly taken into account, and we believe the Japanese contact tracing app is well equipped to protect personal information. Moving on, let me introduce about the PPC inquiry line and some frequent asked questions during pandemic. The PPC has an inquiry line to respond to a wide range of general questions from the public about the Act on the Protection of Personal Information, in short, the APPI. During the pandemic, some of the frequently asked questions by the business operators are about the consent of a principal. In this case, the consent of the employees in question when transferring information to the third party, such as to make announcement of a close contact or to respond to a request from the health centers to conduct an epidemiological investigations. Let me here clarify that under the APPI, obtaining a principal's consent in advance is essential when utilizing personal information for the purpose which is different from the one originally notified to the principal, or to provide it to a third party, including a central government organization. However, the 4 points you see on the screen are considered to be exceptions. We have updated our website on the frequently asked questions in relation to an individual's consent and the pandemic in order to respond to the related questions from the business operators. We also informed medical institutions about the appropriate manner to handle personal information. Specifically, the PPC and the Health Ministry together announced and clarified the rules applicable to transfer a patient to another hospital in terms of whether or not a consent of the patient in question should be obtained, then providing his or her information between the hospitals. Although the remote work was not widely adopted in Japan, as shown in the graph, there has been an increase in the number of companies introducing remote work in the wake of pandemic. This has led to many breach cases of personal data due to unauthorized access while working from home. The PPC analyzed reported incidents resulted from the unauthorized access and posted some ideas of safety measures to be taken by the business operators by means of a public announcement on the precautions to be taken while operating in remote work environment. Just to briefly summarize, as presented, the PPC Japan has been quite active on engaging with relevant parties, for example, by providing advisory inputs and issuing public announcements to the business operators to increase awareness. In order to ensure that personal information is handled appropriately at any time, even in the midst of tackling the pandemic. And that is all from me. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you as well, Ms. Kanoko Esaki, the Deputy Counselor for International Affairs, Personal Information Protection Commission, Japan. And now for our next panelist, we'd like to welcome Ms. Anne Russell, Group Manager, High Priority Inquiries, Policy Projects, Information Commissioner's Office of the United Kingdom. Ms. Anne Russell, you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed. I hope you can hear me clearly. And we're very grateful to Commissioner Laboro for the invitation for the UK's ICO to join the Philippines Privacy Awareness Week, and I hope you're having a very successful week. Thank you for putting the slides on the screen for me. So my name's Anne Russell. I work at the ICO, the UK's Information Commissioner's Office, which is the Data Protection Authority for the UK. And it's been a privilege to be part of the GPA's COVID-19 working group for the last several months, and as other speakers have said, it's been incredibly helpful to understand the issues that colleagues are experiencing internationally and the measures that have been put in place by privacy commissioners to tackle those. So to move on to the next slide. Okay, so like the rest of the world, the pandemic has been an extremely distressing time for the UK, and we've seen since over the last 14 months 128,000 deaths, very sadly, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. In March 2020, the doors of the ICO were closed. You can see a picture of the door of the ICO there. And most of us at the ICO have been working from home ever since. Shortly after, many office staff took to home working. Schools and universities closed, and our first lockdown began. So to fight the pandemic, and in common with many other countries across the world, our freedom of movement was severely curtailed. And in the first lockdown, exercise was restricted to 30 minutes a day, and we were only permitted to leave the house for essential reasons. Looking back, quite surprisingly, so some of the measures were quite surprising in that masks weren't required. For example, if you were going to the supermarkets, so you know it's quite surprising looking back what we've learned in the last 14 months about what measures needed to be in place. But social distancing has been in place since the start of the pandemic in the UK. So there were real fears that our health system would be overwhelmed, and you know, as many of you will be able to relate to, no one really knew what would happen next. So within the ICO, just before the office had closed, we mobilised a couple of operations to respond to the crisis. So internally, a team worked on adapting to and on supporting us and adapting to new ways of working, and also provided additional flexibility for staff who had new caring responsibilities, for example, homeschooling children. And we've maintained that flexible working approach ever since, which has been very supportive for the well-being of staff. So we've been very fortunate on that front. Externally, and something that I've been very closely involved in over the last 14 months, we developed an operation to support key stakeholders that were responding to the pandemic, very conscious that while data subjects' rights need to be upheld, we didn't want data protection law to be perceived as a blocker to necessary data sharing at this time of emergency. So, for example, an early initiative in the UK was the shielding programme to protect and support vulnerable individuals who were particularly affected by the pandemic and weren't in a position to leave the house for any reason. Many of these people would also have been living alone. So there was a government initiative that arranged for food deliveries to be provided to these people, which involved data sharing with supermarkets. And we got involved at an early stage in order to ensure that correct measures were in place in terms of that data sharing. And we worked with data protection officers from both supermarkets and within government to ensure that the right safeguards were put in place around that measure. So we've continued to advise national government and health stakeholders very regularly, and we've produced a hub on our website that you can see on the slides now, and we update that frequently to make sure that it's in step with the current stage of the pandemic. So, for example, at the start of the pandemic, we published guidance on home working and data sharing for community groups. So there was a lot of sort of pop-up groups that appeared locally that supported the shielding initiative and made sure that people were provided for locally. So so we provided some basic data protection advice for perhaps individuals who are responsible for handling sensitive data, people who hadn't been in a position of having that responsibility before. So we've had to work really quickly, like in common with other speakers as they've reported, in considering how the law applies. So, for example, we've thought long and hard about how data protection law applies in relation to temperature testing, which is a measure that's been in place to provide a safeguard around the reopening in some cases of hospitality, and also where algorithms were being used to calculate exam results. So this was a huge issue in the last summer, where students weren't taking the national exams that they would have been in other years. So as well as teacher and school assessments, an algorithm was applied to predict what scores students would receive had they taken the traditional exam. it ended up being quite the scandal, and we've been continuing to investigate and provide support to get to the right outcome for that. In terms of the students who were affected by that, the government had to do a U-turn and just fall back on school results rather than the use of the algorithm. So that was a very public exposure of how algorithms can go wrong. So as well as very regular engagement with controllers, we've also provided tailored advice for data subjects. For example, we've got a piece on the hub around allowing the use of video calls on hospital devices, which something we found quite early days was causing distress for individuals who were in hospital without any visits from loved ones, and some hospitals were going a little too far in applying the law, so we provided clarification that it was appropriate for hospital devices to be used for people to be able to speak to loved ones. So moving on to the next slide, and again, very much in common with the rest of the data protection community who's spoken earlier, the NHS contact tracing app has been something that's been a key part of the measures in place to respond to the pandemic in England, and we've been involved in many discussions with government about how to deliver that in a way that's compliant with data protection law and protects individuals. So we published an expectations document around that, so that we got a marker in the sand, if you like, around what we would expect to see within the design of and delivery of a contact tracing app, and they include such measures which are very much in sync with what others have said earlier, is that we would expect a data protection impact assessment to be produced at the early stages, which it was, that there's transparency for individuals who'll be using it, that only the minimal amount of data is used, that we would expect to see pseudonymized identifiers, that there should be user control with user-centric decentralized design, that there should be a roadmap for winding it down, and that there should be a roadmap for winding it down. So there's quite a detailed document on our website for anybody who's interested. And the ICO is currently auditing the app as using our audit powers, and there'll be some observations published as a consequence of that audit. So to move on to the next slide, thank you. Since last summer, there have been several government initiatives to seek to combat the pandemic, including localised arrangements for lockdown and 2 more lockdowns, which has included the closure of schools and non-essential businesses. And we're now working our way through the Prime Minister's roadmap to recovery. So we're now in a position that the schools have been open for a few months. Non-essential businesses have reopened, and indoor hospitality has just resumed. We had a period of time when outdoor hospitality was allowed, and it was coincided with an extremely cold spell in the UK. So we've been in the position of sitting outside bars or restaurants with many layers of clothing on, which has been an interesting time. We're very fortunate that a lot of the population has now been vaccinated. There's been much debate about COVID status certification or vaccine passports. Again, really interesting to hear what other speakers have said about that, which would be based on an individual's COVID test and or vaccination status. There's been a lot of speculation about this, although that's died down somewhat, including an outcry in the media at one point, that we will be required to show a passport to go about our daily business, to get on a bus or go to the hairdressers or whatever that might be. There's numerous data protection considerations clearly around the development of such a scheme, and we've worked closely with the key government departments in order to make sure that they're aware at an early stage of what these data protection considerations are. Publicly, our Commissioner Elizabeth Denham has published a blog on the topic, which we followed up with another expectations document, and we continue to talk to government departments on this point. As it stands at the moment, we've got an app in readiness for being required to show vaccination status for international travel, and it's not clear how we might be expected to show vaccine status as normal business with it domestically, although it may well be the case that it would be used for mass gatherings, for example, large sporting events or music events, for example, but we await government policy on that front. And meanwhile, the tools are being examined that could be used for such a scheme. One thing that we've been particularly interested in pushing within the expectations work has been that there should be measures in place to prevent usage creep, and the normalisation of this within everyday life. And we've reflected on the fact around whether the role of the Data Protection Authority was to ensure that there was inclusion for those who weren't digitally enabled, and that's a point that we continue to press with those responsible for the rollout of any such scheme. So to move on to the next slide, thank you. So as I said, it's been a great pleasure to be a member of the GPA's COVID-19 working group, and we've benefited greatly by being able to discuss responses to the pandemic with fellow members of the group. A few months ago, the GPA published a joint statement on data protection good practice for travel purposes. And from the feedback we've received, we're confident this has gone a long way to promote data protection internationally. And of course, the GPA is uniquely placed to, as an international network, to be able to influence joined up good practice for international travel purposes. So it's good to see that on the screen as a reminder of that great collaborative work that was done. So thank you very much indeed for listening, and I'd be happy to take any questions at the appropriate point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. And now for our last presenter, we'd like to call Mr. Stefan Niederer, Division 14, European and International Affairs, the Federal Commissioner for Data Protection and Freedom of Information, Germany.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm not sure whether you can hear me. I seem to have some difficulties in logging in.
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Ah, okay. Thank you. It seems that I cannot use the camera in my at my computer, so I will try just to talk to you. Well, let me start by saying that I feel honored to be part of this of your Philippines Privacy Awareness Week. I think this is a very useful and valuable institution to have, and of course, having gone through the pandemic situation for more than 1 year, it is a urgent and relevant topic for everyone in the world, including all nations and countries. So I appreciate that you decided to have a jurisdiction update of various countries in the world. Let me just for a second try to start my presentation on my screen. Well, we have heard presentations from Switzerland and from Japan, as well as from the UK. Now I would like to round off this overview with a few remarks on the situation in Germany. My name is Stefan Niederer. I work for the Department for European and International Affairs at the Office of the Federal Commissioner for Data Protection and Freedom of Information in Germany. Our commissioner has been in office for a couple of years, for 3 years now. The commissioner is Mr. Ulrich Kelber. I'm happy to forward his warmest salutations and regards to all of you. He has been elected for a 5-year term, and now he's heading our office, which is fully independent from the executive branch. And we do have our own budget and can decide on ourselves how to allocate money and resources. Our office has been a member of the GPA since it first met back in 1979. We are members of various working groups, and of course we are happy to be a part of the COVID-19 working group of the Global Privacy Assembly, which is hosted by Commissioner Raymond Liboro, the Commissioner of the National Privacy Commission of the Republic of the Philippines. And I think he has done a great job doing so, stepping in last year when the pandemic emerged and an ad hoc working group had been established by the executive committee. It was really helpful that Commissioner Liboro volunteered to spearhead this particular group. For a couple of after the pandemic had started already in October 2020, Commissioner Kelber was elected and became a member of the executive committee of the GPA. So we are well involved in the GPA activities. Our main tasks are like so many. It's not different compared to so many other offices. We have to monitor compliance and supervise federal authorities. We always try to advise as early as possible our federal government when it comes to new legislative proposals or projects, and we have to handle complaints of data subjects. All in all, our office is comprised of 20 departments, and about 300 people are working there. The number is rising constantly. A few years ago, we have been less than 100 staff members. Now this figure has more than tripled and is still rising, which we are happy about, but it also reflects the increased significance and importance of data protection as an issue for citizens and people all over the world. So let me continue with saying a few words on the current COVID-19 situation in Germany. Yeah, thank you. This is a snapshot from the dashboard, which is being updated every day. I have taken the snapshot, I think, on Tuesday, a few days ago, and you can see a map of Germany, which shows our local areas, our council areas, and a lot of, well, almost the entire country is indicated in a light red or kind of middle red or even dark red. And you can see that in the center, we have a lot of zones indicated in a dark red. We only see a few yellow or kind of orange dots or areas in the north of Germany. These are areas that are close to the sea, to the Baltic Sea to the east, or to the North Sea to the west, and those are areas that are in that are not populated so much, so people tend to have more space there. But in the center, and also with regard to the border to the Czech Republic, we see a lot of areas with high numbers of COVID cases. So that's the situation. It is getting better. But still, we have many areas with quite a high number of cases. In the bottom right section, you can see an overview of the development of COVID cases in Germany, and you can clearly see that we have had a first wave, which is now looking like a small wave at the beginning of the pandemic. That happened in February, March, April, May last year, so roughly 1 year ago. Then we have had a fairly good summer with very few cases. But then in October, November, December, so in the last quarter of 2020, we saw a very steep rise of COVID cases, which moved on to a plateau, and then we saw the overall peak at the end of the year, around Christmas. In December 2020, we have encountered that peak situation. After that, the numbers were falling again. So we have had less cases every day until the mid of February, and then but then the numbers rose again, and we are going now what we are calling the third wave. Now at this moment we seem to be at the end of the third wave, and yeah, situation will hopefully getting better over the summer again. As to the number of cases in total, we have had in Germany 3.6 million COVID-19 infections, and we have had approximately 86,000 people that died with or because of a COVID-19 infection. You need to take into account that Germany has a population of approximately 83 million people. So we thought in the beginning that we were coping with the situation not too bad, but we have really been hardly struck and surprised by the severe second wave, and also to some extent by the third wave. Most scientists are saying that the third wave was coming because some new, more infectious or contagious variants of the virus did emerge. One of them has been, I think, for the first time being detected in the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom was doing more analytical work on virus variants. And now for the last couple of months, we have seen that there is another variant emerging in India. So it remains to be seen how it will go on. Yes, but of course, the government and the public administration in Germany, although we were surprised by the pandemic in March, April last year, soon measures were taken to combat the pandemic. Now you can move to the next slide, please. And Well, since nobody knew how to really what was going on and what was the reason for this new illness and how it could be combat or tackled, the government opted to go into a full lockdown in the middle of March, on March 13. This first lockdown lasted for approximately 2 months. Then we have had that more relaxed situation over the summer, but another full lockdown was implemented in the beginning of November 2020, which lasted until the 8th of March in 2021. So it was let me think, 4.5 months. But we have seen that third wave since March. So the government decided to have another third lockdown in April again, and this third lockdown has been relaxed just a few, well, maybe 2 weeks ago. So we have spent a lot of time in such a lockdown situation with measures that included social distancing, a requirement for companies to have their staff working in the home office was implemented too. After a long discussion, that requirement is still going on. Nightly curfews have been introduced during the full lockdown periods, and of course, and unfortunately, schools and universities were closed. Many shops, restaurants, hotels, touristic facilities were closed, and travel restrictions applied to people in Germany as well as to people wanting to enter Germany as well, because when traveling, testing requirements and quarantine requirements were introduced. Those quarantine requirements were lifted a few days ago, depending on the country of origin of travelers. And but because the summer season and the holiday season is going to start soon, a program has been launched by the European Commission to make traveling in Europe possible or more easily doable again. I think some of my predecessors, some of my colleagues have talked about the Corona Warning app already. Many high expectations have been developed with regard to the Corona Warning app. In case of Germany, it was introduced in June 2020, so that was after the first wave had ended. It was introduced in the more relaxed phase of the summer of 2020, but still the uptake by the public was quite good. We have almost 3 million downloads, 30 million downloads. So we might say that maybe 1 out of 3 smartphone users has downloaded the app, which is quite a good number. The German administration has opted to use the Google Apple exposure notification interface. I think this is the same as with many Corona warning apps of other countries too. The main motivation when designing the app from our point of view was to encourage to use a decentralized approach and not to have a central storage database. This was particularly important from our point of view because it is crucial and decisive for the success of the app to have the trust of the public. People need to have trust into the Corona warning app, because if they don't have trust, they will not download the app and they will not use the app. But reassuring the public that their data that might be collected and processed by the Corona Warning app will be handled very thoroughly and with regard and respecting data protection principles. We think that was a crucial reason for people to believe in the app, to develop trust in the app, and eventually to download the app in fairly high numbers. Of course, the app has been updated regularly. New functions have been included. Now people can sign in and sign out when they go to shops or to restaurants. Now restaurants have partially been opened. Terraces and outdoor areas of restaurants may be used again. And for the last couple of days, we have had fairly nice and sunny weather. So we have been very lucky to sit outside on a restaurant terrace and enjoy a good meal or a nice cup of coffee, because that is something we could not do since November 2020, which is more than half a year. Well, of course, we have had very cold and bad weather during winter time, so we could not sit outside anyway. But the restaurant and cafe terraces have been opened maybe 2 weeks ago. This depends on the local areas and the number of cases there. So we are very, very happy to be able to enjoy a cup of coffee there again. Yes, and interoperability has been an issue as well. Now the Corona Warning app is working in some neighboring and other European countries such as Switzerland, Austria, or Italy too, which is good for the people and for users, because when they travel, when they do enjoy their summer holidays, people don't need to download another app, but they can use the Corona Warning app they already have. Well, since this is called a jurisdiction update, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that, of course, new laws have been adopted in order to combat the COVID-19 disease. We have had a law already on a general law on combating infectious disease, but this law has been developed further and amended in order to allow measures to combat on national level a disease that is so very much severe and very much contagious as the COVID-19 illness. This law, after it has been updated, now allows new measures to be taken by health authorities, and these measures include the monitoring of infectious persons and to collect and process data, personal data of such persons. But in this context, I would like to mention that the data protection law in Germany as such has not been changed or amended, because the law in its current and previous form has already allowed public authorities to collect and process personal data in order to fight infectious disease. It is just the level of severity of the disease is something that has been new, but the legal regime in order to fight that disease has been basically in place before. Well, another measure on national level that has been taken is, of course, the vaccination campaign. Currently, the number you're seeing on the screen, 20%, is a little bit outdated. Now, yeah, I think it was yesterday, it has been announced that 40% of the population that are eligible for the vaccination have received a first dose, and I think something like 15% have received the second dose and now can enjoy the full protection. We are not as advanced with the campaign as Israel or as the United Kingdom, but after a very slow start in January, February, which was due to the lack of doses, of vaccination doses, but now the supply has become better, and the German government also is supporting the COVAX initiative, like the European Commission and many other countries. And just a few days ago, a program has been announced by the European Commission to support the COVAX initiative and to provide, I think, I'm not quite sure about the number, but I think it was something like 100 million doses to countries all over the world. Yeah, so hopefully we may see an improvement of the overall situation with the ongoing vaccination campaign in the weeks and months to come ahead of us. And yeah, as I said, the European Commission and on European level, some measures and programs have been started with regard to facilitating domestic and European and maybe some also international travel. A program on green digital certificates has been introduced. Now the technicalities are being sorted out, and in Germany this green certificates program shall start at the end of June at the latest, and it will include a proof that someone has been vaccinated, or that someone has been tested negative, or that someone has gone through the illness already and is not contagious anymore. I think the preferable technical solution would be to combine this green digital certificate with the Corona warning app, but I don't know whether this will be technically doable, but it would be preferable from well, users friendly point of view. So I think I have been talking for quite a while, and maybe for too long already. Yeah, I would like to thank you again, and to well, express my hope that we will ultimately, in a few months, all together overcome this really challenging situation, and that we will get back to normal someday. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well, Mr. Niederer. Now we still have time for one question. Now we still have time for one question directed to each of our panelists. We welcome our panelists attending live this session, Mr. Christopher Prince, Mr. Stefan Yederer, Ms. Kanoko Esaki, and Ms. Anne Russell. The first question is directed to Mr. Christopher Prince of the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, Canada. This question is regarding digital solutions. Governments across the globe have been taking unprecedented measures to track and contain the spread of COVID-19 and are harnessing the power of data to drive digital solutions. So what has been the biggest challenge that you have encountered in the privacy compliance evaluations of these solutions? And how has your office involvement in promoting the trustworthiness of individuals on using these solutions? Mr. Prince?
Wonderful question. It's a wonderful question. I think one of the things that we realized early on, as the question implies, is there is an enormous value in real-time data. So a couple of examples that folks might be familiar with were some of the mapping or geolocation information products that companies like Google and several telephone or telecommunication service providers were making available to demonstrate areas of quite granular specific urban areas where people were congregating or moving through in close proximity early on in the pandemic, when people were still debating about, what locations were safe, was mass transit safe, were restaurant and shopping venues safe, were parks even safe. So without a doubt, real-time information produced by mobile devices can be incredibly useful for public authorities. And that can come from a number of sources. Here's the kicker. It doesn't have to be personally identifiable. And so very often, one of the immediate pushbacks that we were putting to companies that were making these products available, but also to governments who were trying to do similar things, was to ask the question, do you actually need personal information to do what you are trying to achieve? Because very often it isn't necessary when what you are trying to get at is broad-based community intelligence about movements, not of individual people, but of literally large groups or congregations of people. So that's one question to immediately ask any authority or any service provider who's getting into this this sort of product line is does the information even need to be personally identifiable at all? Can it be de-identified and then packaged and put out for people to use? I hope that answers the question.
For that, Mr. Prince. And now the next question is directed to Ms. Esaki. Ms. Kanoko Esaki.
Yes. Hi, Harold. Thank you.
How crucial? Hello?
Yeah.
My question is, how crucial is the public-private partnership in tackling the COVID-19 pandemic? Can you expound on the role of the Personal Information Protection Commission of Japan?
Yeah. Please wait a second. Let me check. Sorry, we have the expert about this area, so let me pass to him.
Hello, everyone. I'm Haruyuki from PBC Japan. I belong to the Legal and Policy Office office in the PBC. And on the question of public-private partnership for the tackling of COVID-19. Actually, my answer is the same with the answer by the Canada colleagues. In Japan, the useful information is held by the private companies like mobile phone services provider and also the digital platformer. And in Japan, as Ms. Esaki made a presentation earlier, we got statistics information from private companies, like in Canada. We have the statistics information of geolocation information, and which is particularly useful for to knowing the movement of persons and movement person in the situation of state of emergency. And the government used such information to send a message to the general public to stay home, or to don't go to the center of the city or something. But that the government itself doesn't have such information by ourselves. So we asked private companies like mobile phone companies and digital platform providers to share the statistics information of the geolocation information or such to recognize the state of movement of people and to send message to the general public. And we government of Japan has its own dashboard to disseminate such information, but that information itself doesn't held by the government, but that was provided by the private company. And I think that is a good example for public and private partnership in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the Personal Information Protection Commission of Japan. Truly, we are learning so much from the experiences and best practices of other jurisdictions. Now, my next question is directed to Ms. Anne Russell of the UK ICO. Ms. Russell, on COVID status certification schemes, what advice can you share to DPOs whose organizations may also plan to implement the same?
Okay, thank you for the question. So this is a very live issue in the UK at the moment, and the expectation is that a solution has already been delivered for international travel, and we await any sort of policy announcements from government about whether there may be any domestic application of COVID status certification. So we're not anticipating that there will be local private sector solutions in place. And in fact, we would say to if there's organisations considering the use of COVID status certification in order to enter the premises, that they would need to demonstrate that it's necessary to do so in accordance with data protection law, and that they've clearly got measures in place for being able to have safeguards around the handling of health data. So we're not expecting that there would be widespread use of that, and we think that there needs to be clear messaging on that front, although of course private businesses do have the means to be able to prevent people from accessing their premises. On a national level, and we've published an expectations document on this point. There's a number of data protection considerations that we've set out in that, and I won't remember them all, I'm sure, but some of the key ones that we have promoted and discussed verbally with government have been precautions against usage creep. So there should be clear specified purposes for using COVID status certification. This should of course be transparently communicated. There should be a data protection impact assessment, of course, in order to consider what the risks are involved in potentially excessive retention of data, using the data for other purposes, and the fact that people might be denied access to products or services as a result of not being able to demonstrate their certification status. There should also be measures in place to make sure that individuals can correct that information if it's wrong, and that there should be smooth measures for being able to do that, and also of course that there should be access arrangements in place for individuals to see to get hold of a copy of that information. And in fact, on the National Health Service app that's recently been launched, there is a means for people to be able to see that on their phones, and solutions are being developed for those who can't access it through a smartphone. So I think that's a journey through some of the main considerations. Also, we've as with so many COVID-related measures, we've recommended that it should be time limited and held under review. Making sure that it's a proportionate response to the pandemic. So I hope that helps.
Yes, Ms. Russell, that is indeed very helpful. And now my last question is directed to Mr. Stefan Nieder. Has there been any evaluation on the effectiveness of the contact tracing and other digital solutions employed by the government in its response to the pandemic?
Thank you very much for this question. I think this is a very good and important question. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, thank you for that very good and important question. Yes, already at the start of the development of the Corona Warning App, discussions have been conducted on whether it will help to mitigate the situation. And some were saying that the design of the app, following the decentralized approach, will make the Corona Warning App more or less not useful, because it would collect not enough information. But I agree to our colleague from Canada. In many cases, data being used to combat the virus does not always need to be personal data. We have seen with regard to the movement of people that mobile phone operators can collect anonymized data, and that is clearly sufficient in order to monitor where and in which way and on what distances people are moving. And we have seen very early in the first full lockdown phase that movement of people has almost got down to zero. So most people were not moving at all. or just for a few within a circle of a few kilometers around their homes. But that analytic work could be done by using anonymized data. But coming back to the Corona Warning App, indeed, a assessment exercise has been done a few, well, 1 or 2 weeks ago, and the results were quite surprising because the main critics did not prove to be correct, so to say. The assessment found out that several hundred thousands of warnings with regard to dangerous, potential dangerous encounters of infected people with non-infectious people were triggered by the Corona Warning App, and that resulted in people that received such a warning going to a doctor or going to a test center and having themselves tested. So in the end, the assessment exercise found out that something between 7 and 9% of COVID infections could be found due to the activities and the warnings issued by the Corona Warning App. This may not seem very much, but those 7 to 9% of the overall infections were discovered only because of the Corona Warning App, and those infections were in very many cases without symptoms, without people getting very ill. But given the circumstances of COVID, those people can still infect other people, and in such a way they can contribute, even if they don't want to the further spread of the virus and of the illness. So it is in a pandemic situation, it is very valuable to detect even a small fraction of infections that would otherwise not be detected. So all in all, I would say it has not been a super weapon. Of course, the very high expectations in the beginning could not be met by the Corona Warning App, but on the other hand, the most pressing or the most substantial criticism did not prove to be right either. So in one sentence, I would say it has been effective, it has been a valuable tool, but it has not been, of course, a silver bullet.
Thank you, Mr. Niederer. We still have some questions from the floor, and some of which have already been answered by our panelists on the chat box. Again, we thank our esteemed colleagues. We learned so much from your reports and will surely be considering these issues and lessons and best practices for our own pandemic response. Thank you once again, Mr. Christopher Prince, Mr. Stefan Yederer, Ms. Kanoko Esaki, Ms. Anne Russell, and of course to Ms. Marcel Vorgel for sending a video. Now at this point in our program, we have come to our much-awaited Privacy Awareness Week Awards 2021. This is the first time that the National Privacy Commission will be having this award ceremony. And this is to give due recognition to our data privacy leaders and advocates and their outstanding data privacy practices. We now welcome the Chief of our Policy Review Division, Attorney Vida Bokar, to announce our awardees. Attorney Vida.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Attorney Joan. So now we're here at our final home stretch for the Privacy Awareness Week events. This is our Privacy Awareness Week Awards for 2021. So I believe we have a quick AVP. Are we presenting from the tech team before we proceed with the awards that we have for our privacy advocates and institutions? tech team. Yan po. So let's watch this quick video. Well, we're just encountering some technical difficulties. Baka gusto rin po umuwi ng our privacy awareness AVP. So we're just waiting for a while for it to load. So you can appreciate the Oscar Awards inspired backdrop and our very significant keychain and lock, and key. So just to show you a brief description of this Privacy Awareness Week Awards. So we've launched the Privacy Awareness Week Awards, which recognizes individuals and institutions that have greatly contributed in building the foundations of data privacy through awareness initiatives and also showed compliance of their respective personal information controllers or PICs with the Data Privacy Act of 2012. So if you can see on your screen, those are our plaques that we will be awarding to those to the special awardees and institutions in this particular segment. So for this year, we have the following categories of awards that celebrate the achievements of personal information controllers as well as individuals and shine a light on the best practices relating to data privacy and data protection. So we have the following award categories: Outstanding Personal Information Controller of 2021 for the private sector, and we have Outstanding Personal Information Controller of 2021 as well for the public sector. Then our next category for awarding would be the Privacy Initiative of 2021. So this is a particular program or activity that promotes data privacy and data privacy awareness to individuals or institutions. And then we have our another awardee, which is the Privacy Advocate of 2021. So this is awarded to an individual whose privacy efforts and projects and awareness as an individual, which may not be affiliated with a particular institution or PIC, has been lauded and allotted and recognized by our NPC as well as privacy professionals. And our final category, of course, it would not be complete without our Data Protection Officer of 2021. So this is awarded to our registered data protection officer who has shown exemplary leadership and governance regarding their data protection and data privacy activities for leading to this Privacy Awareness Week. So, but before we proceed with those official announcement of our categories and our winners, allow us first to honor a few individuals as well as acknowledge their leadership skills and capabilities in the field of privacy. So we have a few special awards coming up. Our first special award rather is the Privacy Leadership Recognition Award. So this award acknowledges and celebrates the leadership of the following individuals whose works have had a significant and positive impact on the field of privacy in their respective sectors and fields. So these individuals are not only the data protection officers in their respective PICs, they are also the pioneer executive council officers in our Data Privacy Council, which was established by the National Privacy Commission and composed of representatives from various sectors or industries to serve as a consultative body. So it is set to serve as the mechanism for collaboration and knowledge sharing between and among stakeholders, and is intended as well to boost sectoral compliance, assist in shaping programs for the identified sectors of the NPC, and spearhead in drafting their respective sectoral goals. So last August 2019, the DP Council members elected their 5 inaugural DP Executive Council officers. So these elected officers were tasked to create a body that will represent the whole DP Council and intended to get the buy-in as well from the various industries and create a unitary voice wherein all sectors are well represented. Now, these officers have greatly contributed to the sectoral approach of the Commission in serving as a bridge amongst the various sectors that are subject to DPA regulation. And with the valuable insights and contributions extended by these individuals to active DP Council members as well as with the Commission, the DP Council has become more than just a source of feedback from NPC's identified critical sectors. Under their leadership, the DP Council has transcended into an invaluable source of data privacy best practices and a source of inspiration to all PICs and PIPs aspiring to achieve substantial compliance to the Data Privacy Act of 2012. So allow us to give this honor and bestow this honor and special award to our DP Council, Executive Council officers. So we have our President, Ms. Lea Camila B. Jimenez from PLDT, our Vice President, Ms. Leline V. Limorena Bunyi from Cognizant, our Secretary, Ms. Jelaline V. Boqueren, our Treasurer, Ms. Maria Francesca R. Montes from Union Bank of the Philippines, and last but not the least, Mr. Danny C. Cheng from De La Salle University, the auditor for the Executive Council of the DP Council officers. So congratulations and congratulations for this award, for this special award. You may contact, or our team will rather get in touch with you as to the receipt or as to the when your plaques will be ready and when you can pick them up. So now that we've gotten one special award out of the way, but first we will also have a quick AVP because the National Privacy Commission was established in 2016 to ensure that compliance of various individuals, organizations, and other institutions in the country would be compliant with international standards set for data protection. So we are the Philippine government's regulatory arm to make sure that data subjects such as you and I remain in full control of our personal data, especially in this digital age and given the various issues and conflicts that we have over personal information. But did you know how the National Privacy Commission began? So to see our commission's humble beginnings and how far we've come, we have this short video to show you. And let's watch this. And tech team, take it away. Wow, that really takes me back to some of our memories. So for our second award, let me just give you a brief story, quick trip down memory lane. So when I joined the NPC in 2016, I was at a crossroads in terms of my practice in the legal profession. So I wanted to focus on a specialization, but was not yet exactly sure which field I wanted to focus on. So privacy has always been a topic of interest when I was studying law. And with data privacy being considered at the time as an emerging field in the legal practice, I figured it was a good idea or is a good area to probably specialize in. So at the time, NPC was still being confused with NAPOCOR because of the initials, as well as with NAPOLCOM. And our primary task back then when I was hired was to spread awareness not only about NPC, but about data privacy in general. And it was at the time, which was considerably a relatively new concept. And what better way to get a crash course on data privacy than from the actual authorities themselves, whom you saw in the screen earlier, exemplary leaders, two of whom we now bestow upon this special honor. So I owe my passion and zeal for data privacy to these two individuals. Despite our very humble beginnings in one tucked away corner in the DICT basement, the world quickly came to know of the National Privacy Commission and the Data Privacy Act of 2012. Their unwavering drive to spread data privacy awareness and compliance across all 7,000 plus islands in the Philippines and even beyond helped put NPC on the global map, and an agency to be reckoned with when it comes to data subjects' privacy rights. It was always a joy and a pleasure to watch their minds at work when it came to figuring out issues concerning the DPA and data privacy. No query or concern was too small for them when it came to data privacy, and they would even go out of their way to personally deliver DPA lectures and orientations when the NPC was still struggling to fill its ranks. And though resources were limited and personal numbering a few, they found a way to defend and uphold the data privacy rights of Filipinos and other data subjects when one of the largest personal data breaches in the world happened under their watch. So the path these two have forged in both the NPC and in the field of data privacy certainly paved the way for more data privacy professionals and advocates to step up and take the cudgels alongside the Commission to ensure that data privacy principles are adhered to, proper security measures are implemented, and data subjects' rights are upheld. And so it is a privilege and an honor to award the Exemplary Privacy Leadership Award to our inaugural Deputy Privacy Commissioners, Damian Domingo O. Mapa and Ivy Dipatu. So to receive this particular Exemplary Privacy Leadership Award, we have former Deputy Privacy Commissioner Dondi Mapa to show us a brief acceptance speech. Sir Dondi, you have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Sir Dondi, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you very much, the NPC chairman, commissioners, and staff for this distinct and singular recognition. It is truly my honor and privilege to have been involved in setting up the NPC. And for me, this actually began 17 years ago, back in 2004, when President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo appointed me to the Commission on ICT. It was back then that I worked on the early drafts of the Data Privacy Act together with the late Senator Edgardo Javier Angara. Our goal was to protect Filipinos in the information age and to build trust in our IT BPM industry. It took a long time for the law to finally be passed, and it was in 2012 that the bill was signed into law by President Arroyo's successor, President Benigno S. Aquino III. After the law was signed, I was actually invited by the Aquino administration several times to become a member of the NPC, and I would always say, no, I'm already happy in the private sector. But they kept asking me, and so finally in 2016, I said yes. And the rest is history. Or rather, should I say, our story. A story that continues to be written by the hardworking ladies and gentlemen of the NPC, and by all of you DPOs and COPs attending this event. And I know many of you were my students. It is to you, to all of you here and now, that I dedicate this award. More power to us all in protecting Filipinos, promoting economic recovery, and building trust. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Dondi. And for DEPCOM Ivy's acceptance speech, we have a quick video to show you.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat and congratulations on the 2021 Privacy Awareness Week. Commissioner Liboro, DPC Aguirre, DPC Naga, all the people that I've joined hand with as we advocated privacy for the last years, this award is for you, and this award is because of you. I mean, truly, the pandemic has transformed our lives, just as our healthcare workers are safeguarding the last line of defense, just as the world is struggling to find normalcy. The question is, does privacy still matter? And the answer is pretty simple. The answer is yes. Yes, privacy matters because information continues and will continue to be important, particularly in this digital age and age of information. Yes, privacy matters because data subjects do not stop being at risk just because there is a pandemic. Just the last year, we have a lot of data subjects becoming victims of phishing, social engineering, and all other scams. We have unwarranted disclosures of COVID information leading to harassment and cyberbullying. There were a lot of people who became afraid when their names ended up in some list. So yes, privacy matters. Privacy matters because we see a lot of people in social media asking whenever there is a registration system, may privacy notice ba yan? May PIA ba yan? We know that people care because in Naga City, in one of the courts there, a case was filed challenging an ordinance because of a no QR code, no entry policy. So in this day and age, yes, privacy matters. There were calls to suspend the Data Privacy Act, but the National Privacy Commission was unmoved as they continued to guide people with privacy policies and privacy decisions through the pandemic. We know that privacy matters. We hear the National Privacy Commission speaking through Commissioner Liboro in a decision telling us that you don't have to wait for a court order, that a data subject's right matters and that they are entitled to receive information about recipients of their own personal data. We have NPC speaking through DPC Naga telling us that if you violate a data subject's rights, then yes, you may be liable to pay damages. And we have NPC speaking through a decision penned by DPC Aguirre reminding everyone that if you violate the Data Privacy Act, then yes, you may face criminal prosecution. Yes, privacy matters. Privacy should never be just a right that is discarded for convenience. It is a fundamental right that must be protected. I know that there is still a long way to go for all of us to say that, yes, we have truly cultivated the right to privacy. But let us not forget that we've also come so far. There is much to do, but it is something that we can do together. So let me just end this with a call that we continue fighting for privacy, that we continue building trust, that we continue protecting each other and protecting the Filipinos. Once again, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, DPC Dondi and DPC Ivy, and for all the contributions you have given to the Commission. So, and now we've come to the moment you've all been waiting for, the official PAW Awards 2021. But before I announce the winners, we would like to thank everyone who submitted their nominations in the listed categories that we posted online and in our social media accounts. The outpouring number of nominees proved to be overwhelming for our panel of judges. Unfortunately, we can only choose a select few to confer this celebratory honor. So now let's start off the awarding with the Outstanding Personal Information Controller, PIC, for 2021 in the private sector. So the Outstanding Personal Information Controller of the Year for the private sector recognizes PICs, whether for profit or non-profit, that practice a customer-centric approach in their approach to the products and services, as well as data privacy, through demonstrating the qualities of visibility and transparency in all their platforms. So for this category, we have 8 finalists, and we will be awarding the top 3 winners. So for the other nominees who did not make it to the top 3 awardees, everyone is still a winner, don't worry. You will also be receiving a plaque of appreciation. So we have the following nominees. So we have 3M Global Service Center Philippines, ADM and Partners Data Privacy and Consulting Incorporated, Globe Telecom Incorporated, Metropolitan Bank and Trust Company, Philippine National Bank, San Miguel Corporation, Union Bank of the Philippines, and last but not least, Waterfront Philippines Incorporated. And now for the official announcement of our winners for the PIC, Outstanding Personal Information Controller for the private sector. I turn you over to our Privacy Commissioner, Raymond Enriquez Liboro, for the announcement of the top 3 winners. Commissioner?
Protect personal data and demonstrate the qualities of visibility and transparency. ADM and Partners, Data Privacy and Consulting, Inc. Protect personal
sa PNB, Philippine National Bank.
At Union Bank, we embed data protection in our processes, products, and services for our data subjects through regulatory technology.
So there was a brief description of and a brief video of the campaigns for our respective PICs. So now the award of the top 3 shall be announced by our Privacy Commissioner, Con.
Thank you, Attorney Vida. For Personal Information Controller of the Year, Private Sector, second runner-up is the Philippine National Bank. First runner-up is the Metropolitan Bank and Trust Company. And for the Personal Information Controller of the Year, the award goes to San Miguel Corporation. Congratulations.
In the private sector. Sorry, I was muted earlier. So congratulations to the top 3 PICs. Your respective plaques will be provided or award sent by the National Privacy Commission. Just wait for our call or message as to when it will be available. So now for our second award, we proceed with Outstanding Personal Information Controller of the Year for the public sector. So this award recognizes the government or public office that practices a customer-centric approach to their products and services by demonstrating the qualities of visibility and transparency in all their platforms, and continuously work with the National Privacy Commission in developing and implementing privacy policies. So for this particular category, we have awarded 3 PICs as well. So we have, shall we turn it over to Com Leboro for the awarding? I think we only have 3 nominees at this point, so they were all awarded and they were given recognition as well. The chair po.
Citizens' right to access information and their right to data protection are actually complementary. Together with the National Privacy Commission, we seek to strike a balance so that people are informed and at the same time protected.
For Personal Information Controller of the Year, Public Sector, second runner-up is the Central Mindanao University. First runner-up is the FOI, Freedom of Information Program Management Office, under ASEC Chris Ablan. And for the Personal Information Controller of 2021 Public Sector, the award goes to the Department of Health.
Thank you, Leboro. So now we have for our third award, the Outstanding Privacy Initiative of the Year. So this award is awarded to the privacy program or operating activity with an existing, unique, and focused on securing stakeholders' data. So for this particular category, we have 8 finalists, and we will be awarding the top 3 winners similar to those earlier. So for those nominees who did not make it to the top 3, So you're still a winner. You're still considered as a winner since you will also be receiving a plaque of appreciation. So we have the following nominees. I think we have a short video, I think afterwards. So first is hashtag your personal data is in good hands from the Metropolitan Bank and Trust Company. Our second is DPO 23 from Privacy Key Specialist PH. Our third is Mozilla Philippines Community from Mozilla PH. Our fourth is from the PLDT Privacy Office from PLDT Incorporated. The fifth is Safe Space, a kid's guide to data privacy from Globe Telecom Incorporated. Our sixth nominee is Celiado, annual privacy and security event from the Union Bank of the Philippines. Our seventh is the SMC DPO Council from the San Miguel Corporation. And our final nominee, UBP Accelerator Data Privacy Programs from Union Bank of the Philippines. And the top three goes to
Privacy Initiative of the Year. Second runner-up is the PLDT Privacy Office. First runner-up, Celiado Annual Privacy and Security Event, Union Bank of the Philippines. And for the Privacy Initiative of the Year 2021, the award goes to Safe Space, a kid's guide to data privacy.
So congratulations to our Outstanding Privacy Initiative awardees. So our next award for this category, or for this particular category, is Outstanding Privacy Advocate for 2021. So the awardees in this category have made outstanding efforts in advocating for the development, review, and/or revision of policies, guidelines, projects, and/or programs of the organization relating to data privacy and data protection. So he or she also consistently shares his or her knowledge and a passion for advocating data privacy and data subjects' rights with others through writing, speaking, and/or consulting. So here are nominees for Outstanding Privacy Advocate for 2021. We have Mr. Henry Roel R. Aguda from Union Bank of the Philippines. We have Attorney Princess Lou M. Ascalon from IBM. Attorney John O. Bello from Jaldea, Bello, and Suarez Law Offices. We have Ms. Geraldine I. Inocencio Marcial from IBPAP. We have Attorney Leline La Morena Bunyi from Cognizant. And last but not least, we have Dr. Rolando R. Lansigan from Dr. Rolando R. Lansigan Management and Data Privacy Consultancy Services. And the top three advocate awardees are the following. So I'll turn you over to Com for the awarding.
Privacy Advocate of the Year. Second runner-up is Dr. Rolando Lansigan. First runner-up is Attorney John Bello. And Privacy Advocate of 2021 is Mr. Henry Aguda, Union Bank.
So congratulations to our top three outstanding privacy advocates for 2021. Special shout out kay Doc Rolly, my former boss. So to the other nominees, you will also receive a plaque of appreciation from the National Privacy Commission. Just wait for our message or our text. So, and last but not the least, we have our final award. It's for the Data Protection Officer of the Year. So the DPO of the year, for this instance, 2021, is awarded to an individual who is an officially registered DPO of a Philippine-based organization and has actively partaken in privacy-related activities with excellent outputs and participation. He or she has proven expertise in relevant privacy or data protection policies and practices. So this category is a bit different from the other categories because 50% or half of the votes or scores were voted on by your respective DPOs. So in the event that the DPO of the year cannot perform his or her duties due to circumstances beyond his or her control, so the DPO runner-up shall step in and assume his or her duties as DPO for 2021. Just kidding, we only have one awardee for this category, but we have 6 finalists and we will be showing them on the screen. So here are the nominees. We have for Attorney Irish, Krista S. Almeida from PLDT Incorporated. We have Ms. Jelalyn V. Boqueren from San Miguel Group of Companies or SMC Group of Companies. We have Mr. Johnson T. Lim from Waterfront Philippines Incorporated. We have Attorney Arnel Di Mateo from ADM and Partners Data Privacy and Consulting Incorporated. We have Ms. Maria Francesca Montez from Union Bank of the Philippines. And last, we have Mr. Emilio C. Navaja from Central Mindanao University. So for the awarding, and the DPO of the year goes to medyo may suspense.
Goes to Data Protection Officer of 2021, Ms. Jella Boqueren of SMC Group of Companies.
Congratulations, Jella. Simple. Congratulations to all of our winners. I think we just have a bit of correction kanina po dun sa nominees. So Ms. Irish Almeida is actually from Globe Telecom, not PLDT. Medyo nalito lang po kami ng konti. So congratulations to our awardees for this year's inaugural PAW Awards for 2021. So you may, once you get a message from our team, you may receive or claim your plaques in our office at the 5th floor delegation building, PICC. So our team will get in touch with you as to when you may claim your awards and plaques of appreciation. So that wraps up our PAW Awards for 2021. We hope that you would also show the same enthusiasm and submit more nominations for our PAW Awards next year, 2022. And hopefully we'll have more categories to award, as well as a ceremony, hopefully when things get better. So see you all, and thank you for staying with us and being with us at this Privacy Awareness Week event. So thank you, and may you all have a pleasant weekend ahead. I turn you over, Attorney Joe.
Thank you, Attorney. Yes, thank you, Attorney Vida. Now, congratulations to our Privacy Awareness Week awardees. May our DPOs be inspired to be future awardees as well. May this also serve as an incentive to our organizations as personal information controllers and processors to continue their data privacy best practices and privacy advocacies so that personal data is adequately protected and privacy rights are upheld. And now we are nearing the culmination of our Privacy Awareness Week celebrations. Indeed, it has been quite a week filled with activities and learning sessions. We wish to thank as well our DPOs for spearheading their organization's Privacy Awareness Week celebrations. We see your posts on social media and we are very delighted to know that you are with us in celebrating PAW. And now at this point, we'd like to call our Executive Director Ivan Ronald Alzona, for his closing remarks. ED?
Commissioner Mon Liboro and colleagues in public service, distinguished guests, friends, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant day to all of you. A simple thank you will not suffice on how I would want to close our 4th National Privacy Awareness Week conference. But these words express how truly honored I am for us to have this platform and to have this opportunity to unite in one common goal. And that is to spread knowledge on and highlight the importance of data privacy. Our preparations for Privacy Awareness Week 2021 challenge us into coming up with relevant but at the same time relatable discussions for our data protection officers, personal information controllers, privacy champions and advocates, and data subjects alike. Indeed, the current pandemic has accelerated our country's digital transformation at an unprecedented rate. It has forced many of us to transact online and share our personal data in more ways than we have ever imagined. We now transact not only with human beings, we transact with machines, with our smart devices and countless apps. Hence, it is safe to say that we all value our data privacy more today than ever. This is why this year's theme, Valuing Privacy in the Time of Digital Transformation, is very apt for such a revolutionary time. The success of this year's PAW would not be possible without the support and cooperation of all our partners, our allies in government, led by President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, who through proclamation number 527 declared the last week of May of every year as National Data Privacy Awareness Week. NPC's mother agency, where I came from before joining the Commission just last month, the Department of Information and Communications Technology, headed by Secretary Gregorio Honasan, the Department of Education, the Department of Health, Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Interior and Local Government and its local government units, the National Economic and Development Authority and Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, among others. Private organizations that have been side by side with the NPC in rallying for stronger implementation of data privacy policies, most especially in telecommunications, e-commerce, and finance and fintech industries. Learning institutions from here and abroad, supporters from government-owned and controlled corporations and non-government organizations, particularly those who take initiatives in boosting knowledge on data privacy to its users. We know we have never been alone in our fight for privacy awareness. Together with the International Association of Privacy Professionals, all those who constitute the DP Council and our counterparts from different sides of the world, from United Kingdom, Germany, Canada, Switzerland, and Japan, we take charge in raising the flag of data security for all. As we shared our insights on data privacy from our esteemed roster of speakers and panelists across different industries and jurisdictions, we hope that you have collected from our two-day endeavor will be put into action and result in better data privacy policies and stronger implementation of and compliance with the Data Privacy Act. We all have heard and seen how the National Privacy Commission has achieved milestones after milestones since its inception in 2016 through the Commissioner's report delivered by Privacy Commissioner Raymond Liboro. Despite its being one of the youngest, one of the leanest government institutions, yet under the agile leadership of a visionary man, NPC has managed to stay relevant, innovative, and true to our mandate of protecting the fundamental human right of privacy of the Filipino people. I congratulate DPC Don Di Mapa and DPC Ivy Patdu for being recognized by NPC for your outstanding contributions to the NPC. It's often said that public service is a thankless job. Perhaps this 4th Privacy Awareness Week celebration can likewise be considered a fitting tribute to Commissioner Liboro, who without a doubt has cemented his legacy in defending every Filipino's right to privacy. Finally, I thank Deputy Privacy Commissioners Jan Naga and Leandro Angelo Aguirre, the PAW Organizing Committee, our tech support staff, and our NPC women and men who work tirelessly to ensure the success of PAW 2021. Once again, on behalf of the National Privacy Commission, we thank all of you for joining us in celebrating Privacy Awareness Week 2021. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you, ED Ivan. And we hope that this conference has shown you that even in the continuing pandemic, the NPC, your data protection officers, industry leaders, and privacy experts will be here to provide guidance. And on your screens, you will be able to see the QR code that you will be using for our feedback forms. We will send you the certificates after you accomplish your feedback forms. Once again, thank you to all our distinguished panelists, guest speakers, DPOs, compliance officers for privacy, and stakeholders for taking the time to join us for this week. This has been your host, Joan Medalla, and from the entire National Privacy Commission, we thank you for celebrating the Privacy Awareness Week and making the 4th National Data Privacy Conference a success. Thank you and stay safe.